The church basement smelled of burnt coffee and fragile hope. Leo Mercer noticed her, the way a man lost in a desert might notice a single dark cloud on the horizon with a fragile, desperate kind of attention. He was a regular at the Thursday night grief group, a fixture in the same worn-out armchair near the radiator. His 6-year-old daughter, Lily, was the anchor that kept him coming. Her small hand the only thing that could pull him from the riptide of his own sorrow after his wife, Sarah, had died. And this new woman, she was a cloud. She always arrived last, slipping in after the session began, and she always stood near the emergency exit, her body angled towards the door as if poised for flight. She never spoke, while others shared their shattered stories, their voices cracking over names and memories. She just listened, her arms crossed tightly over her chest, her eyes a turbulent sea of green. Tonight, Leo found he couldn't look away. Her stillness was a stark contrast to the raw, shaking emotion in the room. She wore a simple gray sweater, and her fingers, wrapped around her biceps, were white-knuckled. He saw the way her gaze would dart to the exit handle, a calculated measurement of escape. When the facilitator, Bill, said, "And does anyone new want to share tonight?" her entire body went rigid. Leo saw the panic flash in her eyes, a wild, trapped animal look. She shook her head almost imperceptibly, and when Bill moved on, she let out a breath so shallow it was barely there. The hour ended. The group dissipated into a murmur of sympathetic nods and the scraping of chairs. As usual, she was the first to move, turning with a quiet efficiency towards the door. But tonight, Leo moved too. He didn't plan it. The action was a compulsion, a pull he didn't understand. He weaved through the clumps of people, his eyes fixed on her retreating back as she pushed the heavy bar of the exit door and slipped out into the cold night air. He followed. The door swung shut behind him, muting the sounds of the church basement, and plunging him into the quiet of a late autumn evening. She was standing a few feet away, her back to him, shoulders hunched against the chill she couldn't possibly feel through the adrenaline. "You don't have to run," he said, his voice softer than he intended. She flinched, spinning around. The parking lot light cast her face in sharp relief, highlighting the high cheekbones and the startling vulnerability in her widened eyes. "I wasn't running. You stand by the door every week," Leo said, taking a cautious step closer. He shoved his hands in his pockets to show he was harmless. "You look like you're calculating the quickest way out. I noticed." A bitter, fragile smile touched her lips. "Not much escapes you, does it? When you're sitting in silence for an hour, you start to notice the other quiet things," he replied. "I'm Leo." She studied him for a long moment, the defensive wall in her eyes wavering. "Eva, it's okay, you know," he said, gesturing vaguely back towards the church, not wanting to talk in there. "It's a lot." Eva wrapped her arms around herself again, a self-soothing gesture that seemed ingrained. "Talking makes it real, and some things are too real to say out loud." Leo nodded, understanding down to his bones. "My wife, Sarah, she died 2 years ago. Brain aneurysm." One minute she was laughing, the next, he trailed off. "The memory, a physical blow. Now it's just me and my daughter, Lily. She's why I go in there, to learn how to breathe again." For her, the confession hung in the air between them, an offering. Ava's gaze softened, the defiance seeping away to be replaced by a profound, echoing sadness. "I lost someone, too," she whispered, her voice so quiet he had to lean in to hear. "Not to death to me." Leo waited, the silence an invitation. "His name was Daniel," she continued, her eyes fixed on a crack in the pavement. "We were supposed to get married. I was a storm. Anxious, insecure. I created problems where there were none. Pushed him away every time he tried to get close. I was so terrified of being left that I made it inevitable." She finally looked up at him, and the pain in her gaze was so raw it stole his breath. "The last thing I said to him was that he was suffocating me. He just looked at me with this broken resignation and said, 'Okay, Eva, I'll stop trying to breathe you in,' and he left. And he never came back." A single tear traced a path down her cheek, and she wiped it away with an angry, swift motion. "So I don't get to sit in there and talk about my loss. Because my loss was my own fault. I don't deserve the sympathy." Leo's heart ached for her. He saw the same self-recrimination he saw in his own mirror every morning. The endless loop of if only. If only he'd noticed Sarah's headache. If only he'd insisted she see a doctor. "Grief isn't a competition of worthiness, Eva," he said gently. "It just is." She gave him a look of such profound gratitude that it felt like a light switching on in the dark. They stood there for a long while, not speaking, the shared silence a more intimate conversation than any they could have had in the church basement. He learned the curve of her profile against the moonlight, the way she worried her bottom lip when she was thinking. He didn't know how much time had passed when he finally said, "The coffee at the diner down the street is marginally better than the swill in there. And their pie is a religious experience. Would you like to join me?" Eva looked at him, truly looked at him, and for the first time, she didn't look like she was planning her escape. She looked present. "I'd like that," she said, and as they walked side by side out of the shadowed church parking lot, Leo felt a flicker of something he thought had died with Sarah, the fragile, terrifying, beautiful hope of a new beginning. The diner was a relic from another era, all chrome and red vinyl, and it became their sanctuary. For weeks, the Thursday night ritual evolved. They would sit through the group sessionio in his chair. Eva, by the door end, then Tom and Wait, would meet at the exit with a small, knowing smile and walk the 2 blocks to the same corner booth. Over pie and coffee, they talked, they unspooled their stories, thread by painful thread. Leo told her about Sarah's vibrant laugh, the way she could light up a room, and the crushing silence her absence left behind. He talked about Lily, her drawings of 3 stick figures where one was always a smiling angel in the sky, and the terrifying responsibility of raising her alone. Eve, in turn, slowly dismantled the fortress around her heart. She spoke of her childhood, of always feeling like she was too much and not enough all at once. She described Daniel with a painful honesty, not as a villain, but as a good man she had been too broken to love properly. She shared her fears, her regrets, the therapy she was in now to untangle the knots inside her. Leo found himself living for Thursdays. Ava's smile became a beacon, her laugh a melody that started to overwrite the dirge in his soul. She was smart, witty, and her empathy ran deep. She listened to him talk about Sarah, not with jealousy, but with a gentle reverence that made him feel understood, not judged. One night, as they walked her back to her car, a rare, gentle snow began to fall, catching in her dark hair like tiny stars. Lily would love this, Leo said, looking up at the sky. She'd want to build a snowman before it even stuck to the ground. Eva stopped walking. I'd really like to meet her, Leo, if you think that's okay. He looked at her, at the snow dusting her shoulders, at the hopeful, nervous expression in her eyes, and his chest felt too tight for his heart. He was falling for her. It was a terrifying, exhilarating freefall. I'd like that too, he said, his voice thick. She's everything, Eva. She's my whole world. Eva reached out and tentatively took his gloved hand in hers. I know, and I would never, ever try to replace her mother. I want to be a part of your world. Both of your worlds. It was the most hopeful thing anyone had said to him in 2 years. The following Saturday, he arranged it. A simple trip to the park. When he pulled up, Eva was already there, sitting on a bench and looking more nervous than he'd ever seen her. Lily, clutching his hand, peered at the pretty lady with curious eyes. Lily, this is my friend Eva, Leo said, his heart hammering against his ribs. Eva didn't swoop in. She stayed on the bench, giving Lily space. Hi Lily, I really like your boots. Lily looked down at her light-up unicorn boots, then back at Eva. They light up when I walk. I see that, Eva said, her smile genuine. They're the most magical boots I've ever seen. It was the right thing to say. The afternoon was a delicate, beautiful dance. They pushed Lily on the swings, built a lopsided snowman, and shared a thermos of hot chocolate. Leo watched them, his throat tight with an emotion so powerful it threatened to overwhelm him. Eva was perfect. She was gentle, she was kind, and the way she looked at Lily, it was with a pure, uncomplicated affection. On the drive home, Lily, exhausted and happy, fell asleep in her car seat. Leo reached over and took Ava's hand. Thank you, he whispered. She squeezed his hand, her eyes shining with unshed tears. No, Leo, thank you. That night, after he'd tucked Lily into bed, he stood in his quiet living room. The ghost of Sarah's perfume long faded from the air. For the first time, the silence didn't feel empty. It felt full of potential. He picked up a framed photo of Sarah on their wedding day, her smile brilliant and alive. I think you'd like her, Sarah, he murmured. I think she's going to help us heal. A week later, he invited Eva over for dinner, a proper family dinner. He cooked Lily's favorite pasta, and the small house was filled with the sounds of sizzling garlic, Lily's chatter, and a new, joyful energy. After dinner, Lily, buzzing with excitement, grabbed Ava's hand. Come see my room. I have a new stuffy. Leo laughed, shooing them away. Go on, I'll clean up. He was washing the dishes, listening to the happy sounds from down the hall. A sense of profound rightness settling over him. This could be his life again. This would be his life again. Then he heard it. A sharp, piercing scream from Lily's room. It was a sound of pure, unadulterated terror. Leo dropped the plate he was holding. It shattered in the sink, but he didn't hear it. He was already running, his blood turning to ice. He burst into Lily's room. His daughter was backed into a corner, her small body trembling, tears streaming down her face as she pointed a shaking finger at Eva. Eva stood frozen in the middle of the room, her face a mask of ashen horror. In her hands was Lily's favorite photo album, the one with the pink cover filled with pictures of Sarah. Lily sobbed, her voice ragged with panic. She's the lady from the bad dream who was with Mommy. Leo's world screeched to a halt. What? Lily, sweetheart, what are you talking about? The day Mommy went to sleep. Lily cried, her small chest heaving. I saw her. I saw that lady talking to Mommy in the car. She was yelling, and then Mommy fell over and she didn't wake up. The air left Leo's lungs. The memory, buried deep in his daughter's trauma, surged to the surface. The paramedics had said Sarah's car was pulled over on the side of the road when she had the aneurysm. They'd found no one else there. He looked at Eva, and the truth was in her eyes. The horror wasn't from the accusation. It was from being discovered. Eva, his voice was a broken whisper. Eva's hands were shaking so badly the photo album slipped from her grasp and thudded to the floor. The tears that fell now were not of shared grief, but of a long-buried, monstrous guilt. Her name wasn't Sarah Mercer when I knew her, Eva stammered, her voice barely audible. It was Sarah Daniels. Daniel was her brother. The world tilted on its axis. Leo gripped the doorframe to keep from falling. He was my Daniel, Eva wept, collapsing in on herself. The day I told you about, the day I broke his heart. He went to her, he went to his big sister for comfort. I followed them. I was so angry, so irrational. I found them in her car. I was screaming at her, blaming her, saying she turned him against me. And she just clutched her head and she collapsed. Eva looked up at him, her beautiful green eyes now windows to a hell she had carried alone. I was so scared. I saw she wasn't breathing. I ran. I left her there. I left him to find her. I killed her, Leo. My rage killed her, and I've been living with it every single day since. Leo stared at the woman he thought he was falling in love with, the woman who had stood by the exit, always ready to run. He finally understood why. She hadn't just been running from her grief over a failed relationship. She had been running from the scene of a crime, from a death she had caused. The heartbreaking romance, the shared solace, the fragile hope, it had all been built on a foundation of his wife's grave. The twist was not just that she was connected to Sarah's death, but that she had sought him out, week after week, drawn to the wreckage she had created, standing by the exit because some part of her knew she didn't deserve to stay. And as his daughter's terrified sobs filled the room, Leo Mercer realized the most heartbreaking loss was not the one you see coming, but the one that walks back into your life wearing the disguise of a second chance.